ISAR and past president of FOXI. I'm here with you live today on this second Thursday of March for a webinar which is being done by ISAR and technically supported by DocMode. At the outset, let me express my sincere thanks to Zydus for supporting this great academic activity of ISAR being done technically by DocMode. So today we will be talking about magic sticks in our hands for infertility. As you all know, I come from the city of Agra, and that's situated here, and this is my workplace, which is the Rainbow Hospital at the Global Rainbow Healthcare. So when we talk about magic sticks for infertility evaluation and treatment, we have two in our hands, the right and the left hand. And this is the transvaginal ultrasound and the office hysteroscope or the operating hysteroscope which we need. So we have two magic sticks in our hand whenever we talk about managing infertility in females. Ultrasound is complementary and mandatory as an evaluating tool before we go ahead and do any hysteroscopic operative procedure or even a diagnostic hysteroscope. Now, it was said that a diagnostic hysteroscopy is the gold standard for evaluating uterine cavity, but today with transvaginal ultrasound and 3D on our probes, 3D and transvaginal is almost as good as the gold standard. Maybe we need hysteroscopy only for the operative procedures. So let's go back to infertility. Now, infertility is a multiple factors in the female and the male. So after we rule out the male, which is about 45% of infertility causes, we then concentrate on the female. Because the female, you have to evaluate the tubes, the ovulation, the uterine factors, and the cervix or the cervical factors, and general factors as it is, psychological, social, everything. So to evaluate the male goes for a semen analysis, and a woman is subjected to some test, which we feel that ultrasound and transvaginal ultrasound is the best to be done in the follicular phase. So though endoscopy forms the mainstay for evaluating female infertility, it is invasive, and today there is a question raised whether it is required for all or not. And if it is required, what is the best way? When we were students, we were taught that all infertility has to be evaluated by a laparoscopy. There was no hysteroscopy at that time. So laparoscopy is invasive. You have to go into the peritoneal cavity, and what do you pick up? You pick up 15% of the peritoneal factors which are not picked up by transvaginal ultrasound. So for us today, it is the transvaginal ultrasound which is the magic stick, and you make a diagnosis, and then the transvaginal ultrasound positive cases are subjected to an endoscopic surgery and not diagnostic. So in our protocol, the diagnostic laparoscopy and a diagnostic hysteroscopy role is getting diminished and probably vanished to a lot of extent. It is a diagnostic ultrasound with 3D and color and only operative endoscopic procedures. So when we talk of endoscopic procedures, when we have made a diagnosis correctly by ultrasound, what should we do? Hysteroscopy and laparoscopy should be combined in all cases of assessment of infertility. You cannot say that I will not look into the uterus by hysteroscope and look only outside, because looking into the uterus is as good and as important as it is for looking by laparoscopy. So except in wherever we are doing only cavity evaluation in pre-IVF cases, for evaluation of the cavity, sometimes only hysteroscopy is required and no laparoscopy is required. Sometimes small septum, small polyps, small fibroids, these also all can be operated on by only hysteroscopy without a laparoscopy guidance. So should hysteroscopy be used routinely at the time of laparoscopy for investigating female infertility? Well, yes. Because it has low complication rate, it has high degree of safety, it got very minimum time, you can do it in 5 minutes. It adds little to the equipment and cost because the camera, the light source is all the same. And a positive hysteroscopic finding is found in about 15% of cases with normal HSG, hysterosalpingography, which have no history of suggestive of uterine lesion. But when we compare it to 3D ultrasound, the percentage of positive hysteroscopic findings is lesser. So there may be still a role of doing a hysteroscopy, only diagnostic. But when we are doing laparoscopy, it has to be combined with all laparoscopic surgeries at the time of the operation. Now, what should we do to evaluate a female prior to hysteroscopy and laparoscopy? Well, we do all the routine tests, the blood test, the fitness for anesthesia test, infertility evaluation of male causes, transvaginal ultrasound to evaluate the cervix, the vagina, the cervix, the uterus, and the tubes by doing sonosalpingography, and of course the ovaries. So that is the first step. And you add color to it to know the physiology, and you add 3D to it to get an accurate picture. So in our protocol, as I told you just in the last slide, there is a very, very less of doing only diagnostic and hysto and laparoscopy. Whenever we are in doubt with the ultrasound, or whenever we have an ultrasound findings, only those patients go in for a laparoscopy. So let's see, if 100 patients come to me with infertility, and I subject all 100 to laparoscopy, I would be doing around 85 unnecessary laparoscopies, because only in 15 I would find problems which could have been missed by ultrasound. So now 100 patients come to me in follicular phase, I put in a Foley's, I do a sonosalpingography, I do a sonohysterography, I scan the pelvis nicely, and I pick up 85% of infertility problems in the female. Only those 15% of minimal endometriosis, flimsy adhesions are missed on ultrasound. So that is what is the importance of ultrasound today. So evaluate one-step transvaginal ultrasound with saline infusion, with 3D, with color, and you will pick up 85% of problems. And only those with the problems are subjected to operative procedures. The rest can all go for the treatment of IUI or timed intercourse or whatever we plan for them. So let's see what happens when we do a hysterosalpingography. When we do a hysterosalpingography, if you're believing in it and if you're going to do it, I would suggest that you do it under fluoroscopic guidance, as you can see in the video behind in the center. And I suggest that you have to do it yourself. If you send the patient to a X-ray lab and there are technicians, it's very dark, there are all sorts of X-rays being done, there are tubercular patients, you're doing probably more harm to the patient physically and more mentally. But the patient is in a foreign place, there are all male, very bad body odor and very dark rooms, and the patient will get very scared and have a psychological blocks. The advantage is still there, so it's not yet out of our armamentarium. You can get permanent pictures, as you can see up there, of a septate and of Asherman's. And here also we are not very sure it's bicornuate to septate, because you're not seeing the uterus, you're seeing only the cavity. And here it may be just badly done. So what we do is we inject some saline through a Foley's, and when we inject, you can see bridges, as you can see here in this one, as Asherman here. And here when we inject saline, you can see there is a big polyp hanging from one wall of the uterus. So you see the cavity, you see the uterus, and in the same time you see both the ovaries, and you see the spill of the saline outside. So you evaluate the tubes also. So a sonosalpingography done with only saline contrast, we have other contrast also which we'll talk about, is much, much better in a good ultrasoundologist's hand and in your hands, because you should be doing your own ultrasounds. So introduction, then we introduce a volume imaging to it. So when I put saline, then I can take a 3D picture. With the 3D, I get a very, very good 3D cavity evaluation. And the advantage is I can rotate this image on X, Y, and Z axis. So you can look at from this side, and you can look at the cavity from this side. And you get a global structure morphology of what you're studying. And you put color on, you get a 3D Doppler evaluation of the vessels in each of the areas, which you can quantify. So thus, both are believed to be more accurate in assessment of the whole of the pelvis, especially in infertility. So here is a 3D machine and a typical 3D room with a reclining chair, and the patient just lies nicely, and you are doing it yourself, so the patient is very comfortable with you. And so you can get a surface rendering of whatever organ. You can get a multi-planar on the same image. So you get a coronal, longitudinal, and transverse at the same time, and a reconstructed 3D image in the same picture. So it's much, much better because you've evaluated the whole thing very accurately. Then if you want to know the volume of an area, you can do a very accurate volume estimation, especially of the uterine cavity, especially of the ovaries and polycystic, of cysts, of follicles and everything. And then we can put color and do a 3D power Doppler evaluation to know. Then we can do inversion mode, glass mode, automatic, virtual scan. So here, this probably is more simpler than doing a 2D ultrasound. In 2D, you are moving your probe and then you are evaluating in your mind. So patient is lying like this and your probe is going like this. And so you have to invert the picture right angle to your brain and evaluate the pelvis. In 3D, it is when here's the ovary, so I just direct towards the ovary, press the 3D button, it takes the volume of the whole ovary and stores it in the computer. Of the other ovary, of the uterus, of whatever you want to study. And the patient goes back. And then when the patient goes back, you open your computer and then you can play with the images and make a good image and study the whole thing. So it's known as a virtual scan, so it's lesser in time, except for the computerization. For the patient, it is more comfortable and not lesser. So what happens? When your probe, first in 2D probe, the beam comes in one plane. And when you move the probe, it goes this side or this side. In a 3D probe, the probe is kept like this. The beam just sways like this. So fans like this. The beam moves, not the probe, and like this. So it captures the volume of the target organ. Now, if you do a fast moving of the beam, then you get lesser resolution. Now, this is for fast moving targets. Like if a baby is moving inside, then you need to move the fast, otherwise you will not catch the baby. If you do a normal, then you get a higher line density and a better resolution. But if there are tumors, then we do a slow panning. So slow moving, those are all buttons. So you get a very high resolution and the best highest density image. So for accurate evaluation. So frontal fan scanning by a transvaginal probe, you can do the same with the abdominal probes also. And this is what I was saying about volume. So it has all the machines, 3D machines have VOCAL, which is automatic volume measurement. So you get all the 3 planes and then you just draw a dotted line on these planes as you can see here, and automatically the volume is calculated. So from 3 planes, the calculation, the shell thickness, the shell cubic volume will give you. So ovarian volumes, cavity volumes, follicular volumes, tumor volumes, which will be accurately assessed by a 3D scan. This is what I was saying with Doppler. So when I turn the power Doppler, I see the amount of vessels going into that area, which I want to study. Could be endometrium, could be follicles, could be uterine musculature, could be fibroids, could be tumors, whatever. And this will calculate the amount of blood vessels in that particular area. And it gives you automatically the VFI, the flow index, and the velocity index. So you can have calculations of vascularization index, that is the percentage of vessels in that volume, the vascularization flow index, so how much is the vessels and what is the flow, and you can calculate the flow velocity or the flow index also. So let's see how to approach the reproductive organs in infertility. So we approach them systematically. Now I have not kept vagina here. It will be the vagina we want to study first. And let's see, how do you study the vagina? Most of us will put a speculum, sim speculum, or a cuscose speculum in the vagina. So when you put a cuscose and do it, the vaginal wall is hidden by the cuscose speculum. And you actually don't see the vagina. So vaginal evaluation is not to be done as a per speculum examination. Per speculum examination is meant for cervix, not for vagina. So what do we do in vagina? We can do it both ways, by ultrasound and by hysteroscopy or vaginoscopy. So by ultrasound, what we do, we take the normal jelly, ultrasound jelly, fill the vagina with jelly, and then introduce the probe, and then turn right and left in the vagina. So you see all the vaginal walls, the rugosities, the vaginal cysts, the vaginal septums, all the problems. Or you do a vaginoscopy. The hysteroscope, just close the vulva, fill the vagina with saline, and you look at the whole vaginal rugosities. So study of vagina is also very important in reproductive science and especially in infertility. So let's see what now we have to go. Next is the cervix. then the uterus, then the ovaries, then the fallopian tubes, and then the other things which we can do by these two magic sticks. So here is the cervix. Here is my first image, a longitudinal image, the anterior lip of the cervix, the posterior lip of the cervix, the cervical canal, the cervical glands, and the internal os. And I can measure the cervix. I can see that there are no Nabothian cysts and there is no problem or cervicitis in this cervix. So it's a normal, healthy cervix by a 2D ultrasound, grayscale, black and white. So let's go and do a 3D on this. So now I do a 3D on this. So I put the 3D line on the cervical cell here. That's my green line on the ultrasound. And I get a look of the cervix here, the os. And when I move the line up and down, I can make a good, nice 3D cervix. So see the anterior lip, the posterior lip. There's a lot of mucus there. So this is how good you can get with 3D ultrasound. Let's see how it compares with your purse speculum examination and with your vaginoscopy. So we put a purse speculum in, and when I put a speculum in, this is what I saw. Absolutely normal, healthy cervix with an open external os with cervical mucus. And this is what is the picture of the same patient we had got by 3D ultrasound. A good anterior lip, no cervicitis, and a good open cervical, external cervical os with cervical mucus. So this was done on day 13 or day 14. And you see that this cervix is normal and producing normal cervical mucus. And you can easily deduce that the whole hypothalamic ovarian endometrial cervical axis is working normally in this. So this is how good we can get. Let's see what we see by hysteroscopy. So when we filled the vagina with saline, this was another patient, this is not the same patient. And the intravaginal part of the cervix, the portio vaginalis, is seen inside. And when I go in, you can see the squamocolumnar junction. You can see a big erosion. You can see vascularization here. And if I do an acetic acid test, we can do that also and then do this. So hysteroscopy, using the hysteroscope as a vaginoscope to only visualize the cervix is probably much better than actually doing with a colposcope. See, so here we are doing, you see that I'm filling the vagina with a lot of fluid, and someone, my junior, pushed the scope very hard and they caused a little bit of injury in the posterior fornix here. So we could make out this. Similarly, vaginal lesions can be made out. And when I just saw, this is the normal cervix which we see. Now, as I bring the hysteroscope near, the cervix actually opens up and invites you to come and have a look inside. So here we are seeing the crypts, here we are seeing all the glands, the cervical glands, and everything inside. And then, of course, we reach into the uterine cavity. So evaluation of cervix by office hysteroscopy, vaginoscopy is much as good as or even better than what we are doing. So with ultrasound, we get the longitudinal, the sagittal and the coronal section on the same, and we calculate, and our values and accuracy for diagnosis improves. And you use it where? You can use it for endometrial receptivity, for endometrium, for cavity problems, fibroids, polyps, which will just keep on showing you, congenital uterine anomalies, endometrial assessment for endometrial diseases, especially cancers. So here is a volume assessment. So I've got all the three planes, and with my dotted line, I measure or I outline the endometrial cavity, and lo, the machine makes a lovely endometrial cavity for me and gives the volume here, 3.45. So if the volume is less than 2, very less chances of pregnancy. The volume is less than 1, hardly any chance of getting pregnant because the uterus cavity is small. If the volume is very big, more than 12, again very less chances of getting a pregnancy because a very large uterus, probably an adenomyotic uterus. So volume, the best pregnancies are obtained between the volume is 3 to 12 or 3 to 11 rather. So here are the lovely 3D images of the endometrial volume from the side. This is taken from the side because we can rotate. This is taken from one front and this is taken from the back. So you can rotate and you get lovely 3D volumes. And you get a lovely 3D picture. And with my machine, with the electronic eraser it has, I can erase all this part, all this extra part, and only leave the volume. and you get only the uterine cavity. So you can use the electronic calipers to measure, you can use the electronic eraser to erase what you don't want to see and what you want to highlight. So endometrial volumes, here it's a very big volume, here is a normal volume, and that is how we do endometrial volume studies in all infertility cases in the diagnostic cycle when they come first in the follicular phase, with or without saline. With saline it will be much better. So it gives you an idea of the shape of the cavity, the health of the uterine cavity, any invasive lesions if they're in the cavity, any distorting lesions if they're in the cavity, and it gives you an idea about the receptivity of the endometrium when you do a correct volume with the coronal section. So to do the anatomic factor evaluation of the uterine cavity, there are two tools, the transvaginal ultrasound with 3D and your hysteroscopy for treatment. So these are seen more in the problems in recurrent abortions, and the best diagnostic tool is the ultrasound 3D, and the best treatment tool is endoscopy, hysteroscopy. So these are my two magic sticks in my right and left hand for anatomic factors, which are now can be only diagnosed by ultrasound and treated by hysteroscopy. Simple treatment, you do not need major operations to diagnose them properly. So how do we do this? We do this by looking at the normal uterine cavity. Now the normal uterine cavity should have a convex contour, and the normal muscle of the uterus should also have a convex contour. And the depth of the muscle should be equal on both sides. And then you can measure the muscle here, you can measure the cavity length, and you can measure the muscle, and you can see the part. Then electronically I can erase all that, get the cavity as you can see in this video, and turn the cavity on all the sides to look at the cavity health. So if this is not concave, if it is convex, this is a perfect normal cavity, as good as a diagnostic hysteroscopy. So a good 3D ultrasound with a little bit of saline inside is now almost 100%, or almost would become the gold standard very soon. Till then, we of course do a hysteroscopy. So see why I say gold standard. Now this is a cut uterus, what we saw. And hysteroscopy will show you this cavity. And when I did a TVS on this with 3D, this is what I saw. So when I superimposed this on that picture, it was exactly the same. So the sensitivity of volume detection of congenital uterine anomalies goes up to 98% by a good 3D. It's 100% by hysteroscopy, but we are as good as 100 when we do a good transvaginal 3D. So all the abnormal shapes, all the uterine congenital anomalies, whichever classification you're using them, if you're using 1 to 8 classification, all of them, hypoplasia, vaginal hypoplasia, unicornuate, communicating, non-communicating, Robert's uterus, didelphus, bicornuate uterus, septate, complete or partial, arcuate, deep or shallow, and DES or T-shaped uterus. All these abnormalities 3D will diagnose very accurately, and then you can plan your surgery by your other magic tool, which is the hysteroscope. So here is the Eshrey ESG classification of the uterus, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here are the ultrasound 3D pictures which I took, and it matches exactly. So we are as good as a gold standard with 3D for all these abnormalities. And then you go ahead and go on the treatment protocol which is given by Eshrey and go ahead and treat. So coronal views, class U0, that's how it looks like, normal. Class U1, dysmorphic, that's how it looks like by 3D. Class U2, septate, that's how it looks like by 3D. Class U3 or deep septate or complete septate, and class U4 with accessory horn separately, that's how it looks like. So that's how good you can be in your diagnosis. Please do it yourself. Please use saline, and please make a good 3D picture. So here is my unicornuate uterus. By 2D, I was suspecting. And when I did a 3D, I was very confirmed. And then I went ahead and did a laparoscopy, and we saw it was unicornuate, but what was there was a pedunculated, very lateral bicornuate also, a rudimentary non-functioning one. So we went ahead and removed that rudimentary horn just because we were doing an operative laparoscopy. Otherwise, it would have interfered in pain and all in the pregnancy. So that's how it works. So unicornuate uterus, when one corn was seen, and that is how it correlates with the hysteroscopy. So hysteroscopy, though a gold standard, this is ultrasound picture of the same, and this is the hysteroscopic, and that's my ultrasound picture of the video of the 3D ultrasound. And when I rotate, I see there is only one corner. There's no corner on the other side. And the hysteroscopy shows there only one corner, and it's a narrow cavity. Now it's a very narrow cavity. I can go ahead and do some metroplasty and increase the size of unicornuate uterus and then put them on estrogen progesterone for the uterine cavity to increase. So to make the diagnosis, you have to look at both the contours, the uterine cavity contour and the uterus contour. And 3D ultrasound helps you assess both the contours at the same time. So you will be able to make. And the sensitivity, as I told you, with plain transvaginal is also very high. With power, it is very high. With volume, it is almost 98.38. And when you put fluid, it's again about 98 to 99%, as compared to a hysteroscopy, which is 99 to 100%. So it's very, very comparable, very, very doable. It's a simple OPD procedure, no anesthesia required, and do it yourself when you see the patient yourself. So let's go to each one of these abnormalities. Septate uterus. 50% of symptomatic, they cause spontaneous abortions in the first trimester, 5% cause in the second trimester. And we have diagnosed by 3D, and then we go ahead and do an operative procedure, make a short diagnosis, it's a septum, and then go ahead and cut it by scissors, by current, by laser, by whichever energy source you had, but it is better that you cut the septum with the scissors. Now, there is a term used as septum resection. You're not resecting. See the septum, how nicely you can see. You're not resecting, you're not removing anything. Probably the septum has muscular and you're just separating, you're just cutting it and it retracts. So it's just septum cutting. And when we look at the evidence in various journals, the obstetric complications which are caused by uterine anomalies, so uterine anomalies, if detected, should be treated and should be handled. Septate by 2D, you see both the cavities and you see an avascular area in between. Avascular area in between. That is in the normal 2D grayscale. Or you may see scanty vascularization. So if there is scanty vascularization or less or avascular, all the estrogen of the patient or does not act on this area, and you don't get a good endometrium here. So if the implantation occurs here, there will be poor destabilization and poor placentation. So it will abort, or if it carries on, it will be IUGR and growth and problems, placental problems and all those problems. Then septum, as a lot of people now agree, has muscles. And Professor Osama Shauki first said it's muscular, but a lot of people said it's fibrous. And then back now, the latest papers say it has some muscular tissue. So if there are muscular tissue in the septum, it will cause incoordinate contractility and cause abortions. So that is why septums need to be resected if they are found. Even though they are not cause of infertility, they are cause of reproductive failure. So septums have to be cut. 3D gives you an idea of the septum, how deep it is, whether it's complete or partial, and how much vessels are going into the septum. That's the 3D. And it outlines all the contours. So 3D will outline the contours of the uterus. It will give you a frontal view and allows the direction of the uterine anomalies. And once you have a direction correct, then you can go ahead. As I told you, here we find the septum is irregular and we're cutting it with the point current, and here we're cutting it with a bipolar plasma current. Mostly, if they are very thin, we just cut them with the scissors. We try to use the scissors, but if they're thick and muscular, you might need some current to it. So this is how we go ahead and do the septum. Now, how do we differentiate septum and biconvex? Now, we have to look at both the contours, as I told you. Both the contours, convex or concave. So if it is convex, it is definitely a septum. It is concave, then it depends on the angle and depends on the depth. So when it is concave, then it depends, then you join a line from both the cornua and the distance, if it is less than 5 or more than 5. So that will tell you about the septum size and whether it's complete or whether it's partial. So we just have to say the septum is partial or septum is complete up to the cervix. Then we look at the angle. So the angle is more than 90 degrees, very wide, then it is more likely to be a biconvex or a very wide septum. And if the angle is less than 90 or 65, then it is definitely a a septum, and you go ahead and safely cut it without getting worried that you are going to cause perforation or going to cause. And here, that's what we are doing. Based on this, we've gone ahead and cut this, and based on that, we have gone ahead and cut this with the scissors, and this one we've cut with the, because it's very deep and very thick, so we've cut it. This one is a shallow, so we've just gone ahead and cut it with the scissors, as you can see here in these videos. So the magic sticks are working. Now, a lot of times we see T-shaped uterus, very narrow mid-cavity. Now, this was supposed to be the DES mothers who took DES for threatened abortion, and their female children had a narrow uterus. It was seen. So it was seen in my mother's time. And this time we don't use DES. So it's probably more due to chronic endometritis, and India more due to tuberculosis. So this on HSG could give you a classical T, could give you a picture like unicorn weight. On 3D, you will be able to identify the T very nicely. And once you identify the T, you go ahead and do a fundal and a lateral metroplasty in these cases, expand the cavity and give some estrogen progesterone to heal the lesions and have a good endometrium. And sometimes we also inject PRP into the areas where we've done the metroplasty, into that area, not in the cavity. We'll show you the videos of that. So T-shaped uterus, 3D ultrasound for diagnosis, and the other magic stick for cutting it. Doing a lateral metroplasty slowly, carefully, not deep or not very high current, so you don't injure the uterine or don't cause lateral perforations, which might be very dangerous. So metroplasties are the answer, and they can be very easily and very safely now done to increase the uterine size in patients who are not conceiving, or those who have conceived are having recurrent spontaneous failures or recurrent abortions and reproductive failures. Now we have on the ultrasound, on this magic stick, the new probes which are coming in the newer machines. And in the newer machines, see how beautifully I can see the uterine cavity, outline the whole of the tube and outline the spill and these pictures. So as good pictures as anatomic, like looking at the uterus, can be now obtained by the newer 3D. We go back to hysteroscopy. Hysterosalpingography. Is hysterosalpingography out of armamentarium? Well, in mine, yes, unless I'm going to do it myself. But still, if you do it yourself and under screening and take the shots at the right time, you can make very, very good diagnosis with hysterosalpingography also. Only there is dye and only there is radio X-ray exposure, which I'm a little bit worried about. So in the same cycle, you're not able to do an IUI or a follicle monitoring or a spontaneous conception. It has its own therapeutic value, so does the sonosalpingography has its therapeutic. So hysterosalpingography, we are using iodinated contrast, we are exposing to radiation, it is painful, it is uncomfortable, it's on a hard bed which is lying, the table, the radiological table, it's the people all around are not very friendly usually, sometimes may need anesthesia, so that is risky in the radiology setup. So for me, it's right now very, very limited. I would rather go ahead and do a sonohysterography where I put saline and I look at the cavities very, very easily. So when I put saline, this was the normal uterus. When I put saline, I can see the cavity. And then when I go on one side, I can see a polyp hanging. So this could have been missed. Then I do a 3D of that in one slice, and the polyp was in the other picture. And then then I put color and power Doppler, and you see how beautifully the orange color has outlined all the cavity and even the coronal end. So it looks like a T-shaped uterus here. Then I use the magic cut with my 3D and make a 3D rendered image, and I see pictures as good as this. Arcuate uterus with tubes with spill. The cavity appears normal, so I'm not going to do a hysteroscopy cutting on it. If the cavity was a little narrower, then maybe yes, we could have attempted. Or if this patient has recurrent abortions or recurrent pregnancy failures, then yes, we'll go ahead and cut it. So see the 3D with magic cut, see the 3D with magic cut, with the light which we can do, and you can get pictures as good as nice. With the glass mode, now we can, the endometrial cavity, this is fluid, and that's a degenerating fibroid which is going into the cavity. So with the glass mode, the uterine endometrial cavity. Absolutely fascinating pictures which you can get. Absolutely fascinating volumes and the pictures. And it's very simple. You just put the curved line on whichever area you want to study, and the 3D builds an image of that area. So it's very, very simple has, of course, like everything, has a small learning curve that we all have to learn. Now here's a 2D picture of a suspected lesion. I put saline, I see that it's a polyp. I put the 3D with saline, I see that it's a good polyp. There's a wide angle polyp here, and then I put color and I can see how vascularized these polyps or fibroids are. This one, which was suspected as a polyp, but it is a submucous fibroid, grade 2, and submucous fibroid wide completely into the cavity. This got to go, this has to be removed. And the 3D picture showed that how big it was actually, and almost jutting completely into the cavity. So this has to be removed by resection. Dangling polyps, this polyp was coming from here. So we did not know how long it was going. We put some saline and we saw it was coming right to the cervix. And this one was right at the cornua, and this one is completely filling the cavities. 3D helps in polyps, fibroids. With the 3D, we can also do different levels of scanning, what we call a sono CT. So you get a CT-like pictures by cutting the slices with 3D. And you can do slice like this, or you can do slice like this on the X and Y. What about Asherman? Asherman syndrome is suspected on HSG by irregular. When we put saline, you see bridges. When we do a 3D, you see the bridges and the fluid has leaked on both the sides. And then, of course, we go ahead and use our second magic tool to identify and confirm that it is the adhesions, and go ahead and cut them with scissors or cut them with current, depending on how many they are and how thick or how bad they are. And then we use our techniques for prevention of adhesions. So here you see by HSG, by 2D ultrasound, by 3D ultrasound, by hysteroscopy, almost as good as you were seeing it there by all these, and by saline sonography and by hysteroscopy again. So Asherman syndrome again is very, very easily now picked up by 3D ultrasound. Here 2D ultrasound, bridge, 2D ultrasound, multiple bridges. We go ahead and do a hysteroscopy based on this, on these, and go ahead and resect the bridges, cut the bridges here. You see, this is the picture of this patient. You see one bridge here, one cavity here. Use the scissors, cut it. Use the current, cut it if it is very thick and not the scissors cannot cut it. So that's how we tackle Ashermans. Now Ashermans can be classified as 1/3, 1/3 to 2/3, more than 2/3, stage 1, 2, 3, and even the severe most, as I'm cutting here, where only 1/3 of the cavity was visible to me. And I slowly with the scissors, we are slowly, I'm not using current here because I'm scared that it might perforate and it might be very weak. You can see it is very white, very fibrous, hardly any bleeding there, no vessels. So we just go ahead and slowly snip, and use a little bit higher pressure. So after snipping, it just separates, and then put in a adhesion prevention device or inject PRP into this so that the healing is much better. We also go ahead and cut the lateral wall in this. And then we inflated a balloon, you see, and then I put a hysteroscope with the balloon inside to know whether the balloon was inflated properly in the right place or not. So that's, and keep the balloon for 6-7 days and on estrogen therapy. That's how we manage our severe Ashermans. So you try and find a key by 2D, by 3D, by 2D, and by hysteroscopy. Hysteroscopy, the other magic stick for correcting the cavity. If it may be single, it may be very bad, it may be medium. You use scissors if it is single, and just snipping the single, you can see the whole cavity will open up because the pressure is keeping it tense. So the whole cavity opens up. Here we're using monopolar current, and here we're using our scissors, and then we finally made a cavity which is very nice and clean with there, and we'll show you them. Then we go ahead and inject PRP. So this was a very, very bad case. The only thing which we could see was this. So the whole cavity was obliterated. So we went ahead and cut it with scissors like this. And when you go ahead and cut it, then you make space. And once you made space, then we can go ahead with the ovum pickup needle which we use, go ahead and inject PRP into the areas where we cut, so that the healing becomes much better. So here is a complete cut, you now have a good cavity, but you have a poor endometrium, and this endometrium may not respond. There we are cutting, here we are cutting. So we will go ahead and prepare the patient's PRP from her blood and then go ahead and inject. What about endometrial calcification? Endometrial calcifications or bony calcifications or metaplasias can be two types. Inside the cavity, which are usually due to mid-trimester abortions, which are still rampant, and the bony pieces are left. They could be subendometrial, which is endarteritis in the basal vessels, and nothing can be done by this for this, except maybe injecting PRP and correcting the Asherman's. So this is how we diagnose. Now this one had a bony piece in between the calcification, and when we went and did a hysteroscopy, here we're going ahead without holding, we saw that all the bony pieces were lying in the cavity. Trabeculated bone, long bones, every bone, and these are the amount of bones which I took out from this cavity. And then see here, with the grasper, just go ahead and patiently pull each bone out and remove all of them. Here it was a full graveyard of bones. Give history of a 20-week abortion after sex selection, and just they have to be patiently pulled out by the grasper and make it longitudinal so you don't break it in between. And then of course be sure that, so I'm just getting it in the longitudinal plane, and then the cavity. What about fibroids? Now fibroids which can be dealt hysteroscopically are 1, 2, 3, 4. Some brave people, surgeons, will deal number 4. People like me would go for 1 and 2, and maybe a little bit of 3 in 2 stages. So fibroids have to be done with a resectoscope, and be careful, don't cut it and let it hang. So just shave it off, slice by slice, so that you get it all out. So 0, 1, 2 fibroids as classified by ESGE, they all have to be managed. And then you can score them 0, 1, 2, 3 on size, on topography, and then with the score you have give 0, 1, 2, and when you on the size, topography, extent of the base, penetration and wall, and this score will give you the management protocol. If the score is 0 to 4, it's low complexity, you go ahead and do hysteroscopic myectomy. If it is 5 and 6, it's high complex, maybe use GnRH, or maybe do a 2-step hysteroscopic myomectomy, or a very experienced hysteroscopic surgeon. If it is 7 or 9, that means if it is very big and mostly in the myometrium, please don't touch it hysteroscopy. Unless you are very, very experienced like Sergio or like Osama or like any Hemovich or all these people, or like Prakash Trivedi or Prashant. Only those people would probably touch, and they will also probably do it in 2 stages. So hysteroscopic myomectomy, big fibroids, should not cut the base, just coagulate the base and resect it out by the resectoscope, slice by slice. So you make chips, and you make big and neat chips. So here is your algorithm for what submucous leiomyomas do. They cause atrophy of the gland, they interfere with the growth of the fetus, they cause vascular obstruction and poor endometrium, they cause conjunction, they cause reduced delivery of hormones, and if pregnancy occurs, they cause bad presentation and abortions. So fibroid, submucous 0, 1, 2 should be removed. And your ultrasound magic tool, magic wand will diagnose this, and your hysteroscopic magic wand will treat this. How we should be doing it? Hysteroscopically for grade 1, 2, 3, as I told you. And the precaution you have to take is that you just cauterize the base so the basal bleeding does not occur, and remove it slice-wise. Don't please try to remove a 2 centimeter, then you have to leave it in. There are some people who suggest leave it in the fibroid, but then it will cause discharge for a very long time and may cause infections also. What about multiple fibroids? Well, remove all the ones which are in the cavity. The other ones, do a laparoscopy at the same sitting or at the second sitting. Depends on the experience, depends on the time you have taken for hysteroscopic myomectomy, and depends on the patient to patient. So you have to individualize this. What about evaluation of the endometrial myometrial junctions, like adenomyosis? So endometrial myometrial junction should be healthy, good 3-layer, and if it is poor endometrium like this, that means the endometrial junction is poor and there will be poor implanting. We go ahead and do a 3D, and you can see that the endometrium is going into the myometrium. Endometrial glands are going here into, and 3D glass mode is showing that it's adenomyosis. So it could be chronic endometritis or adenomyosis. So you need to resect those, and you need to remove all those endometriotic areas. There will be some chocolate cyst areas which might come, a myometrial cyst which are projecting into the endometrial cavity. So just correct that and then inject PRP for better healing. Various endometrial diseases, hyperplasias, polyps, calcifications, early malignancy biopsies, all to be done hysteroscopically and a diagnosis made and a treatment done hysteroscopically, diagnosed by ultrasound. So here are various types of poor endometrium, irregular endometrium, very thick endometrium, very thin endometrium, endometrium with fluid inside, and a unicornuate uterus endometrium. A very irregular endometrium, despite of the good follicles, it's not growing. So that tells you that the endometrial is poor, and it could be Asherman's or it could be just a poor glands there. Polyps, this is the 3D huge. Again, we found in this frontal and lateral walls, and it was removed very nicely, very safely, completely. If it was less than 1.5, I'll remove completely and pull it out. If it is more, then I'll take it out slice-wise, because I cannot dilate the internal os more than 2 centimeters, otherwise it will cause terrible damage to the cervix. 3-dimensional, you can do the coronal section, you can do the niche mode to know the exact, here is the niche mode, to know where exactly the fibroid is arising, what is its base and what is its color. So niche mode can also be used. And when you have the niche mode, and with the fluid, you get pictures like this. See now, this is how we diagnose by 3D, and this is what we got. So how accurate is 3D in diagnosing exactly the size and the pedicle of the, so we could safely go ahead, cut the pedicle and pull it out by a small sponge holder or novum forceps. Lastly, foreign bodies, IUCDs, forgotten IUCDs, left IUCDs, IUCDs which are misplaced. There is irregular bleeding, patient is not, what type of IUCD is there, longitudinal bone, the T, the radiating ones, the multi-load types or the ring type, all can be very, very easily diagnosed by 3D ultrasound. Of course, we cannot see the thread, but we can always tell you whether it's jutting into the myometrium, or it's still in the cavity, or it's misplaced or overturned, or it is not there in the cavity. So you can go ahead and plan the removal if there is a lost thread or the lost IUCD. Then lastly, for the IVF specialist, in the uterus, there's a maximum point of implantation. And this is 2 lines joined from the cornua, wherever they meet in the cavity, when you join like that, in the center, that's the known as the MIP, or the maximum implantation point. So when we do embryo transfer vaginally, we can creep the 3D abdominal probe up there, make a 3D picture like here, and here's your embryo transfer cannula, and leave the air bubbles with the embryo right at the point of maximum implant. So that is how you can probably get better pregnancy rates. Well, magic sticks can go wrong. If you are inexperienced, you could make wrong diagnosis. If instead of injecting saline, you're injecting too much air, you could make complications. You could induce infection, even when you're doing ultrasound, usually very rare. And with the hysteroscopy, you can have equipment failure. If you buy substandard equipment, you can have a procedure failure if you're using pump and trying to pump fluid with a pump. So always use very, very good hysteroscopic pumps. And the latest ones, which are by Osama Shawki design, which give you high pressure initially and then lowers the pressure when you enter it. Fantastic pump and gives you entry without holding the cervix. So vaginoscopy, cervical entry, reduce the pressure, uterine cavity, septum is there, increase the pressure. So the minute you cut, it separates. So that is the kind of devices we need for failures. And of course, there is going to be some complications whenever you do surgery. The complications with hysteroscopy are when you're cutting and an enthusiastic cutting like I did in this, I thought, let me increase the cavity a little more. And you see, I'm using the full scissors. I'm not using the tips. So I know I'm making a mistake. And there it is. So I made a wound. And I can see the bump. So this could happen to anyone. Don't get scared, just come out, leave it alone, it'll heal by itself. If it is bleeding, then go ahead, do a laparoscopy and put a stitch there. If it is done by current, then yes, then you have to look at by laparoscopy, he put it, and look at the nearby omentum and whether you have burned it or not. So mechanical and electrical injury. Fluid overload is the most dangerous thing which can happen to you by hysteroscopy. Even if you're using normal saline, you're going to cause hemodilution. Luckily, if we now have bipolar plasma to do all the surgeries, so we do them with normal saline, and that's not too much of a problem unless you use too much. So if you use 3 or 4 liters and 3 or 4 liters leaks into the patient's blood volume will increase and cause her respiratory problems. When we were using glycine, glycine is isotonic, so that leaks out more than 1 or 2 liters into the blood. It will bring down the sodium and the potassium, and that will cause a lot of problems, Stroop syndrome. So be very careful of the fluid overload. That's a complication I'm very, very worried about whenever. So hysteroscopies have to be very fast. Within 20 minutes, you have to finish things. Or don't do it, or do it in 2 steps. Infection, yes. Whenever we are going inside, there is a small risk of infection, but take care of it. Bleeding, yes. When you are cutting, you could hit a major vessel. So you should be prepared to cauterize it. You should have the proper equipment, proper bipolar, hysteroscopic equipment to cauterize and stop those bleeding. So complications can occur, and we better be ready for it. So ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, today volume ultrasound is a modality of choice to evaluate the female pelvis in infertility, especially the uterine cavity and now the tubes. And hysteroscopy, the other magic wand in my other hand, is the gold standard for operating within the cavity and for making 100% diagnosis of cavity disorders. With the newer machines, with the BT16 enhancement, now BT19, with each year they add a software, you get class images, you can put light into it, you can do a marvelous type of thing and very easily. The learning curve is there, but it's very less. So my sincere advice is, if you are practicing infertility, TBS, color, 3D, and do it yourself. Please don't depend on your radiologist friend, because then the patient comes back, and the correlation is never made. Do it yourself if you're going to do infertility. Some of our books which describes all these, especially the ultrasound in OB/GYN, Foxy's book and Foxy's textbook for postgraduates, Foxy's and operative for postgraduates, which describes all the hysteroscopy in details. And of course, we are very, very proud, me and Jaideep, for again revising Jeff Cott's. So we've done the 7th, 8th, and now the 9th edition of Jeff Cott's textbook. This is actually a personal pride measure for all of us. For the ultrasound lovers, we have a series called as the Step-by-Step Malhotra Singh series on everything about ultrasound. And they're available in English, which you can read. If you cannot read English, they're available in Spanish. They're also available in Chinese. So happy reading, happy practicing, do well, use the 2 tools very nicely. Thank you very much for listening to this webinar. Greetings from Rainbow Hospitals, greetings from the beautiful building from the city of love, Taj Mahal. So please post your questions. I will answer them on WhatsApp. I'll answer them on email. Or DocMode will help you answer them. Once again, thank you, Zydus. Thank you, DocMode, for doing this for the Indian Society of Assisted Reproduction. Every second and fourth Thursday, you are on a new webinar. Thank you very much.